A man returned home after working overseas for years to pay off his mother-in-law's debts, only to find his wife in bed with another man. But this was just the beginning. As he uncovered more secrets, his fight for justice would become a compelling story you wouldn't be able to put down. To pay for my mother-in-law's medical treatment and clear her debts, I worked overseas for 4 years. When I returned, I found my wife had already been sleeping with another man. My wife and her lover humiliated me, and my mother-in-law mocked me, just as I agreed to the divorce. I unexpectedly discovered they had killed my mother. In my rage, I decided to fight fire with fire. After 4 years away from home, I was finally back. Standing at the front door of my home, despite my exhaustion, I couldn't help but smile. I hadn't called ahead. I wanted to surprise my wife, Tiffany. As I opened the door and stepped into the entryway, I heard a woman's voice coming from the bedroom, rhythmic and unmistakable. I rushed to the bedroom door, and the sight before me made my blood run cold. Tiffany and a man were entwined. My entrance startled them. Tiffany looked up, her wail of pleasure turning into a scream of shock, her voice cracking. "Ma Marcus, what are you doing back?" She pulled the blanket around herself as she spoke. Her lover also scrambled to get dressed. "Who is he?" I demanded, pointing at the man, my eyes bloodshot. "Preston Hayes, you need to go," Tiffany urged, pushing the man out. With them caught red-handed, I wasn't about to let them off easily. I reached out and grabbed her lover by the collar. "No one's leaving until this is explained." The man was clearly intimidated by my 6'1" height. "Bro, let's not get physical. We can talk this through. Marcus, don't get carried away. If you hurt him, you'll go to jail." Tiffany, still undressed, lunged to pull us apart. She shoved me hard, and I lost my balance. Falling to the ground, my back slammed against the bedroom door with a loud thud. Those two lowlifes froze. Tiffany looked at me with confusion, then noticed the unusual state of my leg. "Marcus, what happened to your leg?" I tried to push myself up with my hands, but my injured right leg gave out, and I collapsed back to the floor, watching me struggle helplessly on the ground. Preston Hayes suddenly smirked. "Oh, so after a few years overseas, you're crippled." He kicked me hard. "You lame cripple. I slept with your wife. What are you going to do about it?" I sat on the ground, glaring at him, finding something familiar about the guy. I must have seen him before I went overseas, but I couldn't place him at the moment. Seeing my state, Tiffany relaxed. She unhurriedly got dressed, then gave Preston Hayes a light nudge. "You should go back now. If this gets any louder, the neighbors will hear." Preston Hayes sneered, pinching her waist. "You always scream so loud. Do you really think no one knows?" Tiffany giggled, swaying her hips. "Oh, you." Those two lowlifes brazenly continued to flirt and banter in front of me. I was so furious I wanted to tear them apart, but I was powerless, able only to glare at them with rage. Preston Hayes looked down on me with disdain. "What are you staring at? Don't like it? Let me tell you. Tiffany and I have been together for 4 years. You've had a huge set of horns referring to being cuckolded on your head for a long time. All right, don't you have the night shift at the hospital today? Hurry up and go. Don't be late." Tiffany pushed Preston Hayes towards the door. As he passed me, Preston Hayes spat on my face, then strutted away triumphantly. I furiously wiped my face with my sleeve, removing the spittle but not the shame. Tiffany saw him out the door before returning. Seeing me still on the ground, she didn't offer to help, just stepped over me and sat on the edge of the bed. "Why are you back?" she asked, looking at me, her face devoid of any shame. "I was fired," I said, my face clouded. "A month ago, while logging, a falling tree struck me. Though I barely survived, one of my legs was ruined because of that. I lost my job. No one would support a cripple." Tiffany glanced at my useless leg. "Where's the money? Did they give you any compensation?" Suppressing my anger, I asked, "You don't care about your husband's well-being, only the money? Anyone can see your leg is crippled. That you're a cripple. What's there to ask?" Tiffany held out a hand. "How much compensation did you get? Give it to me." The compensation was about $300,000. If this were before, I would have handed it over without question, but the recent events made me wary. "There's no compensation," I said, hanging my head. "My boss saw I was injured, only bought me a ticket back home, and then fired me." Tiffany's expression changed when she heard that. "Why didn't you demand it? That's a work-related injury. You know that, right? Overseas is different from here. The language barrier means there's nowhere to appeal. I'm lucky to be alive and back, loser." Seeing there was no money, Tiffany couldn't be bothered with me anymore. She leaned back against the headboard and started playing on her cell phone. I gripped the doorknob and slowly pulled myself up from the floor. "Tiffany, aren't you going to explain what's going on with you and that man?" "What's there to explain?" Tiffany didn't even glance at me. "What you saw is what it is. I was out there, working tirelessly every day to pay off your family's debts, and you were at home, hooking up with a lover. How could you do this to me? What have I done to you?" Tiffany slammed her cell phone onto the bed, sat up, and yelled, "You were having a good time by yourself overseas. leaving a whole home on my shoulders. With elders and a child, I had to handle everything alone. Do you think it was easy for a woman like me? When I left, my mother-in-law was in the hospital, my mother wasn't in good health, and our daughter, Lily, was only 5. Thinking of all this, I felt a pang of guilt. I know you've had it rough these past few years, doing everything on your own, but I sent you all the money I earned, at least 5 or 600,000. If you were overwhelmed, you could have hired a nanny. But there's no excuse for being with another man. I can hire someone to do chores, but can I hire a man when I want one at night? Tiffany rolled her eyes at me. Since you've already seen it, we might as well get things straight, the way you are now. There's no way I'm spending the rest of my life with a cripple like you. Let's get a divorce. A wife cheating is something no man can tolerate. But then I thought of our daughter. She's so young, and a divorce would surely harm her innocent heart. I decided to swallow everything that had just happened. Tiffany, it wasn't easy for you to take care of the family alone while I was away from home these past few years. You were lonely, and that's why you were with that man. I can understand. As long as you break off contact with him from now on, I'll pretend this never happened, and we can go back to how things were. Tiffany scoffed. Before, you were a strong, capable man. Now, you can barely move your limbs, and you can't even find a job. Are you planning on having me support you for the rest of your life? I don't need you to support me. I'll definitely find a way to make money and provide for you and Lily. The way you are now, you'd only be able to begging on the street corner with a bowl to get a few bucks. You might be willing to do that, but I won't lose face for it. Tiffany stood before me, arms crossed, and said coldly, Marcus, I'm being direct today. You're a cripple now. I'm not staying with you and letting you drag me down. Rest tonight. And tomorrow we'll go to the courthouse to file for divorce. What about our daughter? I'm not taking on a burden. After the divorce, you take her with you. That was not something a mother should say. It was clear she didn't care about her daughter. Thinking of how my daughter had lived these past few years, my heart ached. I asked, what time does Lily get out of school? 4:30. It's already past 4. Why haven't you gone to pick her up? She usually comes back by herself. She's only 9. You let her walk to and from school alone? Aren't you afraid she'll run into bad people? I rushed towards the door. Which elementary school does she go to? I'll go pick her up. I had always considered myself a rugged man, but the moment I saw my daughter, my eyes welled up. In the crowd, children who had just been dismissed from school rushed towards their families waiting to pick them up. Only Lily was alone, walking home with her head down. Compared to her classmates, she seemed thin and short. Her small face bore a silence that didn't belong to her age. Was this still my lively, cheerful daughter, whose eyes used to curve into little crescent moons for eyes when she smiled? Lily! My daughter looked up, turning her gaze towards me at the sound of my voice. She froze when she saw me. She rubbed her eyes, stared at me for a moment, then came running towards me. Daddy, you're back. My daughter threw herself into my arms, hugging my waist tightly. Lily, you still remember Daddy? I stroked her head, my heart swelling with emotion. She was only 5 when I left. On the way here, I was worried she wouldn't remember me. Lily let go of me, rummaged through her backpack, and pulled out a photo. With a sob, she said, Daddy, look. I've always carried your photo, waiting for you to come home every day. The photo was a bit crumpled, likely from being held and looked at often. In the photo, my daughter sat on a merry-go-round, and I stood beside her, watching over her. Both our faces were beaming with joy. Back then, Lily's face was plump. How did she become so thin now? My heart ached, and I hugged my daughter tightly. My daughter cried out in pain. What's wrong? I quickly let go. Her small face was contorted in pain, but she forced a smile. Daddy, I'm fine. I took her arm and gently rolled up her sleeve. Seeing her exposed arm, I gasped. Her slender arm was covered in bruises. There were also 2 round scars, seemingly left by cigarette burns. My heart ached so much it trembled. Lily, tell Daddy, who did this? It was Mommy. My daughter whispered, why would she do this to you? I truly couldn't understand how a mother could be so cruel to her own daughter. Sometimes if I burned the food or didn't wash the clothes properly, she would pinch me. I couldn't believe my ears. She made you do laundry and cook. Hum. Damn it, she made our 9-year-old daughter do all that. What about these? I pointed to the 2 round scars. It was Preston. My daughter held it in for a moment, then finally burst into tears. He told me to call him Dad. When I wouldn't, he would use cigarette burns on me. I was trembling with rage. What else did those 2 do to you? They made me sweep and mop and wash Mom's and Preston's underwear, those 2 scumbags. They actually made my precious daughter serve them and wash their underwear. Damn them to hell. Lily, your mom treats you like this. Why didn't you go to Grandma's home? She would take care of you. My daughter cried. Dad, Grandma passed away the winter you left. My daughter's words hit me like a bolt from the blue, stunning me. My mother had been gone for over 3 years, and I had no idea How did she die? Mommy said Grandma had an asthma attack and passed away before she even reached the hospital. My mother had suffered from chronic asthma since she was young, but she was always careful, and it rarely flared up in recent years. I never imagined that while I was away from home, her old illness would relapse, and she would just be gone. Back at home, Tiffany was lying in bed, talking on her cell phone. Seeing us enter, she quickly said a few words and hung up. What kept you so late? Where were you running around? Tiffany snapped at Lily. Aren't you going to make dinner? She's so young, and you're making her cook. What kind of mother are you? I accused her angrily. Think your dad's back to support you? Tiffany sprang up from the bed, tugging Lily's ear. Now go. I quickly rescued my daughter from her grasp. I'll do it. Is that all right? After dinner, I told my daughter to go do her homework and decided to have a serious talk with Tiffany. My mother passed away. Why didn't you tell me? Tiffany's hand trembled, and the cell phone she was playing with nearly slipped to the floor. Who told you? Lily. She said Grandma passed away 3 years ago. What else did she say? Tiffany sat up straight. Nothing much. Why are you so nervous? I glanced at her. My mother passed away. Why didn't you even tell me over the phone? Would it have made a difference? Tiffany leaned back against the headboard, listlessly. She died suddenly from an illness. If you bought a ticket back, at most you'd have seen her one last time. Round-trip tickets cost over $10,000. Plus, you'd need to take time off. Why bother coming back? Even if I didn't come back, you should have at least told me. Facing my questions, Tiffany suddenly changed the subject. Oh, by the way, your mother's house hasn't been transferred yet. Before we divorce, hurry up and take care of that. She was so fixated on the divorce that my heart gradually turned cold. If you want a divorce, fine, this house can be yours. I'll live in my mother's house, but our daughter has to stay with me. You can have the child, but both houses must be mine. I took care of your mother until she passed, so her house should also be inherited by me. Then where will Lily and I live? That's your problem, not mine. This woman, who had cheated first, now wanted me to leave with nothing. I couldn't reason with her. So I decided to go to my mother-in-law the next day and ask her to talk some sense into her daughter. I went overseas to work primarily to raise money for Tiffany's mother's surgery. Her mother had a car accident that year because she ran a red light and was primarily at fault. The other driver only paid a few $1,000s out of humanitarianism. She had to bear the rest of the costs herself. Her mother had no medical insurance. The surgery alone was over $200,000, and with post-operative rehabilitation, it totaled over $300,000. For an ordinary home, this was an enormous sum. Tiffany discussed it with me. My parents are old, and my dad's meager pension of a few $1,000s definitely isn't enough to pay off this debt. How about you go overseas for a few years and pay it off? As their only son-in-law, paying off her family's debt was not the issue, but I didn't want to go overseas. After all, my father had passed away a few years prior, leaving my mother alone and in poor health, and Lily was only 5, who would willingly leave their home, work, and hometown far behind to work overseas? But Tiffany kept crying and throwing tantrums, accusing me, her son-in-law, of not doing my duty. In the end, I had no choice but to agree to work overseas. The job she found for me was as a logger in Australia. She said the job paid well, so I could save enough money to come back sooner. Only after I went did I realize it was one of the most dangerous professions in the world. Every year, many people get injured on the job, some even losing their lives. I worked for 2 years, constantly on edge, finally saving over $300,000 and was ready to return home. But Tiffany said that with the elders getting on in years, it would be good to have some extra money on hand in case of illness or disaster. I had no choice but to keep going. Last month, due to a co-worker, let's think of another way. They spent the entire afternoon discussing it but couldn't come up with a better solution. I had always thought my mother passed away due to a relapse of her old illness. I never imagined it was their doing. Originally, I just wanted to collect evidence of their adultery, gain custody of my daughter in the divorce, and get the property I was owed. But now, things were completely different. As her son, I would never let my mother die without justice. They had to receive their deserved punishment. I stayed at the hotel for 2 days, thinking a lot. Early on the 3rd day, after checking out, I went straight to the hospital. 4 years ago, when Tiffany's mother was in the hospital, I nursed her for over half a month. So I was very familiar with the surgical ward. When I arrived at the doctor's office, Preston Hayes was walking out, preparing to make his rounds. He jumped when he saw me. What are you doing here? Dr. Hayes, we need to have a serious talk about you and my wife. I said it loudly, immediately drawing many eyes. Preston Hayes's pupils constricted in shock. Let's talk over there. He tried to pull me towards the stairwell. Of course I refused. My lame leg buckled, and I fell to the ground. Help! The doctor's assaulting me. People immediately gathered around, including patients' families and medical staff. What's going on? A man in his 50s walked over, frowning. Chief of staff, this is a patient's family member. Before Preston Hayes could finish, I lunged forward and grabbed the Chief of Staff's lab coat hem. You're the Chief of Staff? Do you control your subordinates? My mother-in-law was treated here, and Hayes is having an affair with my wife. No, it's all a misunderstanding, Preston Hayes stammered, sweating profusely. This is a hospital. What kind of scene is this? The Chief of Staff shot Preston Hayes a look. You and this family member go to my office, talk to him properly and clear up this misunderstanding. The Chief of Staff politely invited me into his office, then left, citing an urgent patient. Preston Hayes glared at me, seething. Marcus, what exactly do you want? Causing a scene at my workplace? I only have one demand, I said provocatively. When Tiffany and I divorce, she must leave with nothing. If you don't agree, I'll come to your workplace every single day to make a fuss. No sooner had I stepped out of the hospital than I received a call from Tiffany. Marcus, you scumbag. If you have a problem, come at me. Why cause trouble at Preston Hayes' hospital? He used his position to seduce a patient's family member. He can do it, but he can't stand being called out. I scoffed. Tiffany's tone softened. Marcus, after all we've been through as husband and wife, does it have to be like this? Come back, and we can discuss things properly. I don't have time. I'm taking my mother's urn back to my hometown to be buried together with my father. I might not be back until the day after tomorrow. Oh, and Lily hasn't been back there before, so I'll take her with me and get her 2 days off school. Fine, take her. Tiffany clearly didn't care about her daughter. She only cared about her and Preston Hayes' interests. Let me know in advance when you're coming back. Okay, these next 2 days, you and Preston Hayes should discuss it carefully. My voice carried a threat. If you don't give me a satisfactory answer, I'll go to his hospital every day. He gave me a huge set of horns, making me miserable, so he won't have it easy either. Tiffany didn't say anything more, but from the rapid breathing I heard through the cell phone, I could guess how furious she was. I picked up my mother's urn and took Lily with me back to my hometown. When my father was buried 10 years ago, a spot had been reserved for my mother. This time, I went back, reopened the gravestone, and buried them both together. I brought Lily to the grave and bowed my head several times, silently vowing in my heart, Mom, I'm back. I know you were murdered, and I will avenge your death. Please, you and Dad, bless Lily to grow up quickly and live a long, peaceful life. Back in the village, I entrusted Lily to Uncle Thomas and Aunt Martha. They had been very fond of me when I was a child, and now, seeing Lily back, they were exceptionally kind to her as well. I told Lily that summer vacation was approaching, and the school had already given her leave, so she wouldn't need to go to school before the break. Daddy had some things to take care of, and she would stay at Uncle Thomas's home for a few days. Lily clutched my sleeve tightly, her eyes filled with panic. Daddy, please come back soon. Don't leave me again. I hugged her close. You're Daddy's sweetheart, and Daddy will definitely come back for you. Behind the village was the local hills. When I was a child, my friends and I would run off to play wild on the local hills as soon as school let out. The adults at home were always busy and had no time to look after us. Sometimes, when it was the season, they would even make us carry small baskets to gather wild edibles on the local hills, which they would then sell in town. It had been many years since I'd returned to my hometown. Going up the local hills again, my mood lightened considerably. It had just rained 2 days prior, and many mushrooms had sprouted on the local hills. As I picked them, I kept an eye on the situation through the cell phone surveillance. Sure enough, my scene at the hospital had made Preston Hayes and Tiffany restless. They called Tiffany's mother, and the three of them gathered at my home to discuss a plan. Preston Hayes paced the living room, looking agitated. The Chief of Staff spoke with me again today. If Marcus keeps causing trouble, he won't be able to protect me. If this escalates, I might lose my job. That's serious? Tiffany was startled. Just recently, the dean held a meeting, emphasizing the need to rectify medical ethics and conduct. If at this time, word gets out that I have an inappropriate relationship with a patient's family member, and her husband shows up, it would be like a slap in the dean's face. He'd have no choice but to suspend me. What should we do then? Should I just give Marcus one of the houses? He doesn't just want one house now. He wants you to leave with nothing. Deborah's eyes held a fierce glint. If you ask me, at this point, there's only one solution: eliminate Marcus. Mom, you're not telling me to kill someone, are you? Tiffany was terrified. Of course not, Deborah said, looking at Preston Hayes. Preston, didn't you say you had a friend at the psychiatric hospital? Just say Marcus has a mental illness, have him admitted, and then he won't be able to cause trouble at your hospital anymore. Tiffany disagreed. If he goes into the psychiatric hospital, how will I get a divorce? You won't need to divorce, Preston Hayes said with a faint smile. A few months from now, if he dies in there, you can inherit all his property. That's a good idea. Next, the three of them begin to plan how to send me to the psychiatric hospital. Preston Hayes suggested putting sleeping pills in my food, then drugging me unconscious and driving me away. Tiffany said she couldn't manage it alone and asked Preston Hayes to come help her that day, watching Tiffany eagerly plotting to murder her own husband. The last shred of hesitation in my heart vanished. I dialed Tiffany's cell phone. My mother's urn has been laid to rest. I plan to return tomorrow. Ask Preston Hayes if he can come to home tomorrow night. The three of us can have dinner and finalize the divorce in person. Tiffany covered the cell phone, seemingly consulting with Preston Hayes, then said, "All right, tomorrow night it is." All right, everything was set. The show was about to begin. I entered the psychiatric hospital the next afternoon. I returned home. Tiffany was puzzled to see me return alone. "Why didn't Lily come back with you?" "I had her stay at Uncle Thomas's home for a few days," I said irritably. "We're discussing our divorce. Do you think our daughter should be present?" Tiffany was probably preoccupied with the night's plans and didn't care whether Lily returned or not. "All right then, Preston Hayes will be here after work at 5. I'll make a few dishes. You can help me. This guy gave me a huge set of horns, and now I have to serve him? Where's the justice in that?" I mumbled, my hands helping with the vegetable preparation. "Oh, and that bag of mushrooms in the kitchen? I picked them from the local hills back in my hometown. You're not allowed to cook them for that guy." Tiffany shot me a sidelong glance. "It's just a bag of mushrooms. What's so precious about them? They're wild mushrooms from the local hills. They sell for $180 a pound outside. I picked them to give to Lily's teacher as a gift." Tiffany snorted and said nothing more. We both worked together to prepare 6 dishes. By the time the food was on the table, Preston Hayes arrived. During dinner, Preston Hayes was very polite to me, calling me Marcus repeatedly and even pouring my wine himself. With him being so polite, I found it hard to argue further. After 2 bottles of beer, I steered the conversation to the main topic. "I've been away for a few years, and you got together with my wife. While I'm angry, I admit there are reasons on my side too. Since you two want to be together, I won't stand in your way. But let's be clear, divorce is fine, but our daughter comes with me." Preston Hayes said, "All right, Tiffany, and I know you care for Lily, so she can stay with you. This house was bought by my home, and I'm keeping it. As for the money, it was all hard-earned by me. What was spent on Tiffany's mother's medical treatment is fine, but the rest must come back to me." Tiffany was anxious. "No way. Why should it all go to you?" I glared at her. "If you don't like it, then let's not get divorced. We can keep living together." "This isn't exactly non-negotiable." Preston Hayes winked at Tiffany. "I brought a bottle of red wine when I came. It's in the kitchen. Go open it and let Marcus try some." Tiffany agreed and went to the kitchen. When she returned, she held 2 glasses, handing one to me and one to Preston Hayes. I didn't take it. "Why does he get a new glass and I get an old one?" Tiffany quickly explained. "He's a guest, isn't he? You don't give a guest an old glass. Hey, he's spent more time living here these past few years than I have, in your eyes. I'm the outsider, aren't I?" Tiffany rolled her eyes at me. "We're almost divorced. What's the point of talking about all that useless stuff?" "No, I want a new glass today too." Tiffany glared at me, wanting to say something more, but Preston Hayes nudged her, and she reluctantly went. A moment later, she came out of the kitchen carrying a glass full of red wine and set it down heavily in front of me. "Drink up." I glanced at her. "It's rare to see you so attentive. It's like you're trying to poison me." Tiffany looked a bit flustered. "What nonsense are you talking about?" I scoffed. "It's a society governed by law now. I doubt you'd have the guts." With that, I downed the red wine in the glass. I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but I distinctly felt Tiffany and Preston Hayes breathe a sigh of relief. I then asked, "How did my mother pass away?" Tiffany said, "Your mother's old asthma flared up, and by the time I got back, she was already gone." My mother's asthma hadn't flared up in years. How could it suddenly attack? "Did you give her something she shouldn't have eaten?" I slapped the table and stood up. But a wave of dizziness hit me, and my body swayed. I quickly grabbed the corner of the table for support. Tiffany and Preston Hayes exchanged a glance, then both came over to steady me. "What's wrong with you?" I feel a bit dizzy." "Do you feel dizzy, weak all over, and lacking strength?" Preston Hayes asked me. Yes, I felt increasingly off, and my eyelids started to droop. I struggled to control myself, trying to stay awake. "That's the medication taking effect." Preston Hayes chuckled. "Most people take 1 tablet and it works within half an hour. I used 5 times the dosage, so it's hitting you now. You really dared to drug me." I pointed at them, feeling only that the figures in front of me were constantly swaying. "Don't be afraid. It's just a common sleeping pill. In your words, it's a society governed by law. We wouldn't do anything illegal. We're just going to let you have a good sleep. When you wake up, you'll be in a good place." I wanted to get up and beat those 2 lowlifes, but my body wouldn't obey, slumping onto the chair like a pile of mud, and my eyelids uncontrollably closed. In the last moment before I lost consciousness, I heard Preston Hayes' smug voice. "Oh, right, now I can answer your previous question. My mother's death was orchestrated by Tiffany and me. We put some hazelnut powder in her chicken and mushroom soup, and her asthma flared up after she ate it. When I woke up again, I was in an unfamiliar place. The surrounding walls were stark white, and my limbs were strapped to the bed. It was only through the conversations of the doctors and nurses that I realized I was in a psychiatric hospital. I didn't fuss or make a scene. When they told me to take medicine, I took it. When they told me to sleep, I slept, but when they weren't paying attention, I would secretly pinch my thigh hard to try and stay as conscious as possible. I looked out the window, silently counting in my mind. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Sure enough, on the 3rd day of my stay at the psychiatric hospital, the police arrived. Tiffany was dead. Preston Hayes and Deborah were in the ICU, undergoing emergency treatment, according to the police. They had accidentally eaten poisonous mushrooms. This mushroom was called death cap mushroom. It was highly poisonous, with an incubation period of up to 24 hours after ingestion. The day after Preston Hayes and Tiffany sent me to the psychiatric hospital, Tiffany stir-fried the mushrooms I had brought back from the local hills and ate them. She also sent some of the leftovers to her mother the next day. When Preston Hayes noticed the symptoms, he was at the hospital. He immediately underwent emergency resuscitation and is still not out of danger. Tiffany wasn't so lucky. When she first experienced symptoms of vomiting and diarrhea, she thought she'd eaten something bad and just took a couple of pills. By the time she developed difficulty breathing and was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, her condition had already worsened. She quickly fell into a coma and was pronounced dead. As for Deborah, who ate the mushrooms a day later than them, she had just started showing symptoms when Tiffany was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. Thanks to timely medical attention, her life was saved. The police took me back and asked me about the source of the poisonous mushrooms. I told them I had gathered them from the local hills near my hometown, intending to give them to my child's teacher. This was exactly what they had heard in the surveillance footage from my home. They wanted to ask further questions, but I interrupted them. Officers, you picked me up from the psychiatric hospital. Shouldn't you first assess my mental state before asking questions? Otherwise, would you dare to use clues provided by a psychiatric patient? The 2 detectives taking interview notes exchanged a glance, and sure enough, arranged for me to be sent to a designated hospital for a psychiatric evaluation. Soon, the evaluation results came out. The evaluation results show that your mental state is completely normal. You can answer questions now. Officers, does this mean that after I leave here, I can go back home and won't be confined to a psychiatric hospital again? If you can prove your innocence, you can leave. I smiled and nodded. All right, please ask, when you picked the mushrooms, did you know they were poisonous? I didn't. You grew up in the village. How could you not recognize them? Many mushrooms look similar. Anyone could mistake them. As I said this, I looked at them in surprise. You're not suggesting I deliberately picked poisonous mushrooms for them to eat, are you? Isn't that the case? The old detective stared intently at me. Not only did they have an affair during their marriage, but they also orchestrated my mother's death. You have sufficient motive for the crime, but I was drugged with a sleeping pill and sent to a psychiatric hospital at the time. How could I have poisoned them while I was in the hospital? Perhaps you learned of their plan from the surveillance footage and deliberately played along, pretending to be drugged and admitted to the psychiatric hospital to avoid suspicion. Before the incident, you deliberately told them there were mushrooms in the fridge and that they were nutritious, tricking them into eating the mushrooms themselves. You wouldn't have to lift a finger to eliminate them. Officers, your imagination is a bit too vivid. In a society governed by law, everything requires evidence. What you just said can only be considered speculation, not evidence. A faint smile played on my lips. Even if I truly orchestrated all of this, they would still have had to go through with it. If Preston Hayes hadn't been so greedy and Tiffany hadn't been so ruthless, no one could have punished them. One could only say it was all fate. 24 hours later, I was released due to a lack of evidence for murder. Tiffany was dead. Although Preston Hayes and Deborah survived, they both suffered severe liver damage as a lasting consequence. The police obtained evidence from the surveillance footage that they had deliberately put hazelnut powder, leading to my mother's death. They were consequently sentenced to life in prison and 15 years in prison, respectively. After being discharged from the hospital, a long period of incarceration awaited them. Of course, these are all details for later. I returned to my hometown to pick up Lily and told her about Tiffany's death. Lily was initially a bit sad and helpless. Once her emotions calmed down, her first question was a timid, "Dad, are you going to leave again?" "Sweetheart, Dad isn't leaving ever again. He'll always be by your side until you grow up and get married, Dad. You have to keep your word." My daughter hugged me tightly. "Now I only have you. Don't worry, Dad will definitely keep his word." I extended my pinky finger. "Come on, let's pinky swear." Our big hand and small hand hooked together, sealing it with a solemn gesture. It was Memorial Day again a year later, and I took Lily back home to pay respects to our ancestors. Lily had changed a lot that year, becoming the talkative, cheerful little girl she used to be again. She personally arranged flowers and offerings in front of the gravestone, and was chattering happily about interesting things from school. After paying respects to my parents, I took my daughter to climb the local hills behind the village. This season, there were many wild edibles. I took her digging for wild vegetables, picking fruits, and gathering mushrooms. My daughter found everything new and exciting. In less than half a day, the small basket we brought was completely full. Dad, there are more mushrooms here. My daughter ran to a large tree. Sweetheart, don't touch that one. I hurried over, pulled out a wet wipe, and carefully wiped her little hand that had touched the mushroom. I pointed to the grayish-brown mushroom with a hint of dark green and said, "This kind of mushroom is poisonous. You can eat it." "How do you know?" my daughter asked, looking up at me. "Have you eaten it before?" "If I had, you wouldn't be here now," I said with a smile, taking Lily's hand and walking down the local hills. "Dad, tell me about when you were little." "Sure. Back then, after school, the adults at home were too busy to supervise us, so we'd play all over the local hills. The local hills was our playground. Whether it was animals, wild vegetables, fruits, or mushrooms, there was nothing Dad didn't recognize.